According to international law and the laws on war and neutrality, the Hawaiian Kingdom government was illegally overthrown. According to the Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom case in the Permanent Court of Arbitration Arbitral Tribunal in 2001, the Hawaiian Kingdom existed as an independent state in the 19th century and was recognized by the United States, United Kingdom, and other varying states, whether by diplomatic exchange, consular representation, and the conclusion of treaties. On January 16, 1893, United States troops invaded the Hawaiian Kingdom, whereas the following day, Queen Liliuokalani gave a conditional surrender, trusting that justice would give her the power back that was rightfully hers.
In 1893, we read about how Hawaii was illegally invaded by the United States. So this event was actually confirmed to have happened. The illegal overthrow was confirmed to have happened by the U.S. president at the time, which was President Grover Cleveland. We also heard about how U.S. Marines arrived with the intent to fight, and Queen Liliuokalani yielded her position with the intent that her people wouldn't get hurt, and with the thought that her power would be restored, and that the people of Hawaii would be able to get their kingdom back. And the Treaty of Annexation was proposed, in which Queen Liliuokalani was against and fought to end so that the islands wouldn't be ceded with the United States. And after many years of resistance, America used joint resolution to illegally annex Hawaii, which was confirmed in another article that we read by Dr. Alfred M. Desaias, who is a United Nations independent expert.
The National Lawyers Guild, or NLG, calls upon the United States to abide with international humanitarian law in its prolonged and illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom since 1893, and it has been over a century since the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Great Britain and France recognized the kingdom as a sovereign and independent state where Hawaii formed over 90 legislations throughout the world, had treaties with multiple countries, and was a member of the Universal Postal Union. The kingdom also provided universal health care for its people and became one of the most literate people in the world, second to Scotland. In an investigation, President Grover Cleveland concluded that the military occupation of Honolulu by the United States on the day mentioned was wholly without justification. Queen Liliuokalani reacted by giving up her authority to the U.S. In this negotiation, Queen Liliuokalani was promised that she would be the constitutional sovereign and then grant a full pardon to the insurgents. The prolonged and illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Islands are viewed as war crimes. NLG condemns the unlawful presence of the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific Command with over 100 military sites throughout the Hawaiian Islands, which caused the island to be a target for strikes.
So in this article, I read that the United States pretty much targeted the Hawaii's educational system because they didn't want Hawaiians to feel like they're Hawaiian anymore. They wanted them to feel like they're American, and they did this by taking away their language and their hula, and it basically ended up in just a lot of Hawaiian cultural traditions just being lost, and it's just known as a process called denationalization, and it goes against humanitarian rights because you're basically taking away a part of who that person is, and I thought that was just something that was really wrong to do with them, and it was really impactful because as a result, you have plenty of people in today's world who don't even know how to speak Hawaiian, for example. I'm not fluent. I really want to be fluent in Hawaiian, but because of stuff that happened way back when, I am missing out on that opportunity to learn Hawaiian.
Constitutional monarchy comes into place in 1839 and in the Declaration of Rights. But Kamehameha I was the first one who was to divide his power. Kamehameha III knew that he needed to gain recognition from other countries to be seen as an equal. So Kamehameha III sent his representatives to all countries around the world and got recognition from places like England and France. And they recognized Hawaii as a sovereign independent nation on November 28, 1843. This gave Hawaii a seat at the table of nations as an equal. By 1890, Hawaii had peace treaties with almost every other recognized country. To recognize as a Hawaiian, you didn't have to have Hawaiian blood. This helped Hawaii to move forward in the interracial voting, which America hadn't had in 100 more years in the civil rights movement.
Although in the early part of his reign, he was under a regency by Queen Ka'ahumanu and later by Ka'ahumanu II. His goal was the careful balancing of moderation by adapting Western ways while keeping his nation intact.
On page 52 of Uamau, it states that during the constitutional changes, the revised constitution retained remnants of centralized rule, giving the crown the authority to alter the constitution or even cede the kingdom to a foreign state without legislative approval. And these provisions of the 1852 Constitution included Article 39 and 40 and Article 45, which were the main ones that really gave the power to the king to abrogate, since that's what Kamehameha V wanted to do with the 1852 Constitution and create a new one. And because during that change of altering the Constitution, it took away the absolutism power the king would have in order to alter or cede the Constitution to a foreign state. And because of that, King Kalakaua did not have the ability to sign the Bayonet Constitution into law because he needed to put the Bayonet Constitution he needed the legislative approval to do so, and because King Kalakaua was not able to do that, he didn't have the ability to sign the Constitution, the Bayonet Constitution, into law.
There was a settlement between Hawaii and the United States, but it is generally unknown, especially in Hawaii, because Kanaka are just not aware that we are part of an international community and that we're not a part of the United States.
In reaction to Liliuokalani attempting to reinstate the lawful constitution in 1893, Lauren Thurston, the organizer of the insurgents, formed a committee of safety and sought military protection from U.S. Minister John L. Stevens. This group declared themselves the provisional government on January 17th, 3 days after Liliuokalani tried to reinstate the legal constitution. On July 4th of 1894, the provisional government renamed themselves the Republic of Hawaii and maintained authority by hiring armed mercenaries. According to international law, it is the duty of the occupying state to administer the laws of the occupied state. In regard to Congress, its laws have no extraterritorial effect, and thus the laws of the U.S. Congress cannot impact the Hawaiian Kingdom nor its government, as these are lands beyond its control. Neither can the Congress of the occupied state create new laws until the period of occupation has ended.
The current movement is predicated upon the legality of the issue rather than simply injustice. We are now aware of the legal wrongdoings of the U.S. and are able to use both international laws, U.S. constitutional laws, as well as Hawaiian Kingdom laws in order to attempt to hold the U.S. accountable for their wrongdoings.
According to international law, the duty of the occupying state in relation to the state that is being occupied is to enforce the occupied state's law and refrain from enforcing the occupier's laws. As stated on page 103, one of the fundamental duties of an occupier is to maintain the status quo ante for the national population of the occupied state. The principle applies to those who possess nationality or political status of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Thus, the United States is precluded from affecting the national population through mass migration and or birth of United States citizens within Hawaiian territory. Also on page 104, it states, international laws mandate that an occupying government administer the laws of the occupied state during the occupation in a role similar to that of a trustee and beneficiary relationship. Thus, the occupier cannot impose its own domestic laws without violating international law.